When you think about a time capsule, the whole point of it is preservation.
Right.
You bury it in the dirt, you dig it up like 20 or 50 years later, and you expect to find this perfect, untouched snapshot of exactly who we were at that moment.
Yeah, exactly. The dirt on the artifacts, the wear and tear, that's actually part of the appeal.
Right. It's a historical record. You don't dig up a time capsule and, immediately start repainting the items before you put them in a museum.
No, of course not. You wouldn't take an old 1990s Game Boy and try to install a touchscreen on it just so it makes sense to a modern kid.
Exactly.
The friction of that old technology is the entire point of looking.
But lately, it really feels like our entire pop culture landscape is essentially this massive, continuous unearthing of time capsules.
Yeah, it really does.
Except the people digging them up are immediately taking a chisel to them. They're scrubbing off the original paint, swapping out the parts, and then presenting this heavily modified artifact as if it's what we've been waiting for all along.
Which is wild.
It is wild, and that's exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to another Deep Dive. We are so glad you were here with us. We are looking at an incredibly tense cultural tug-of-war today.
It's a big one.
Yeah. On one side, you have these beloved legacy properties, global juggernauts, really, like Harry Potter and Bridgerton.
Right, massive fan base.
Huge. And on the other side, you have modern casting decisions, sweeping narrative update, and the intense, almost inescapable politicization of the actors and creators involved.
It's everywhere.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this because this goes way deeper than just, surface-level internet drama.
Oh, absolutely.
We're looking at the actual mechanics of why modern media feels so fundamentally divided.
And in an era of absolute information overload, it is incredibly easy to just get lost in the noise of social media backlash.
Definitely.
You see a trending topic, you see people arguing in the comments, and you're scrolling. But the underlying patterns here are what really demand our attention.
Right, like why are studios so relentlessly committed to remaking the past instead of forging the future?
Exactly. And why is the relationship between the art, the artist, and the audience fracturing in real time?
So to understand the casting controversies that are lighting up the internet right now, we really have to look at the ecosystem they are born into.
The broader.
Yeah. We are living squarely in the era of the Hollywood remake treadmill.
The treadmill, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Right. Let's look at the newly announced Harry Potter HBO TV series. The timeline here is just wild.
It's not that old.
No. The very first movie came out in 2001. The last one wrapped up around, 2011?
2011 or 2012, yeah.
And visually, narratively, they still hold up. They are a permanent fixture of modern cable television and streaming.
They're on constantly.
Constantly. But here we are gearing up for a complete from-the-ground-up television remake.
A total reboot.
Yeah. And the polling data on how the public feels about this, it's staggering.
What did the numbers say?
So 64% of respondents stated they're completely tired of remakes and will not be watching this new series.
Wow. Nearly 2/3 of your potential built-in audience is actively opting out before a single frame is even shot.
And it actually gets worse for the studio.
How so?
Another 28% said they're tired of remakes, but they'll watch it anyway, just begrudgingly.
Begrudgingly, right.
And only 7% actively love remakes.
Just 7%.
Yeah. And a tiny 1% love remakes but won't watch this specific one.
So when you add that up,
you have a massive 92% of the audience experiencing distinct remake fatigue.
That is a massive rejection of the core concept.
It really is. Yet Hollywood just keeps churning them out.
They do.
We're looking at a new 13 going on 30.
Wait, really?
Yes, a movie that completely relies on early 2000s nostalgia and Jennifer Garner's specific charm.
That seems like a strange choice to...
Right. And we're also looking at the upcoming Moana live-action movie.
Oh, yeah, the trailers for that are already out.
And they are getting heavily criticized. People are saying it looks visually flat and completely devoid of the vibrant color palette that made the animation sing.
It's like reheating a gourmet meal in a microwave. It might look similar, but the texture is all wrong.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy. And we've seen this happen already. Look at Amazon's Lord of the Rings adaptation.
Right.
Or Star Wars, The Acolyte. They fundamentally struggle to capture the magic of the lore they are built upon.
They really do.
So I have to ask you, are studios just terrified of original screenplays? Or is there an underlying belief that they can somehow, fix these classics for a modern palette?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it's heavily driven by economic mechanics.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think of it like financial indexing in the stock market.
Interesting.
In the 1970s and 80s, Hollywood operated more like a venture capital firm. They took wild bets on unproven, volatile stock.
Like original scripts.
Exactly. Original scripts by unknown directors like George Lucas or Steven Spielberg at the time.
Right. Star Wars was a massive risk.
Wow. Huge risk. Sometimes those bets failed, but when they hit, They created massive culture-defining returns.
Okay, so how is it different now?
Modern Hollywood operates like an index fund. They want guaranteed low-yield return. They are almost entirely risk-averse.
They want safety.
Right. A recognized intellectual property and IP is essentially a blue-chip stock.
Because everyone already knows the name.
Yeah. Even if the movie is mediocre, the brand recognition guarantees a certain baseline of international box office and streaming revenue. So they just keep buying into the index.
But, the index fund analogy only explains the financial safety.
True.
It doesn't really explain the creative choices.
Yeah.
Because if you want the safe return of the Harry Potter IP, why not do what the fans have literally been begging for?
You mean expanding the universe?
Yeah. Why not greenlight a Marauders series? You have this incredibly rich, expansive lore.
Absolutely.
You have the original author still alive and able to consult. You could explore the backstory of James Potter, Sirius Black, and Lupin.
It's all right there.
Right. You could expand the universe, give us new corners of the Wizarding world to explore, and keep the original films intact. But instead, they are choosing to overwrite the existing canon with a one-to-one remake.
And that is exactly where the financial risk aversion collides with the modern impulse to revise.
How do you mean?
Well, expanding the universe requires writing a totally new story, which inherently carries creative risk.
I see.
Remaking the exact same story is perceived as safer. But you're right, there is a distinctly modern hubris at play. Yeah, this assumption that a writer's room in 2024 or 5 possesses a superior cultural lens.
Oh, wow.
And therefore, they think they can refine a story that already resonated with hundreds.
That is such a good point.
The friction starts because studios force a barrier audience established. Take something you love, modify its DNA to fit contemporary Hollywood sensibility, and then hand it back.
And that desire to update a classic, it immediately hits a wall when you look at the actual text.
It always does.
Which brings us to the specific controversy surrounding the casting of Severus Snape in this new HBO series.
Right. This is a major flashpoint.
It really is. We are looking at the casting of a black actor, Papa Esidu, in the iconic role.
Yeah.
Now, I want to play devil's advocate for a second.
Yeah.
We see colorblind casting or race swapping all the time in modern adaptations.
Sure. It's very common.
Like, Bridgerton is basically built on the premise of an alternative history, racially diverse Regency era.
Exactly.
So, if we accept a black Queen Charlotte in Bridgerton, why is casting a black Severus Snape the line in the sand for so many fans? Why does this specific change break the immersion?
Because of the architectural load-bearing walls of the narrative itself.
Okay, unpack that.
Let's actually use that Bridgerton parallel to illustrate how these changes operate on a mechanical level.
Okay.
In the upcoming season 5 of Bridgerton, the established book character of Michael Sterling is being changed.
Right.
He's being changed into a black woman named Michaela Sterling. So we have a gender swap and a race swap, transforming a heterosexual romance into a lesbian romance.
Right, and on the surface, a casual viewer might just say, well, it's a romance show, who cares? Love is love.
Exactly. But when you look at the actual architecture of that specific book in the series, Francesca's relationship with Michael involves a deeply civic, painful struggle with biological.
Oh, wow. Right. It's not just a backdrop.
No, it's the core emotional pivot of her entire character.
Because her desire to conceive a child with her late husband's cousin is the driving force of her internal conflict.
And their external relationship dynamic.
Exactly. So by swapping the male lead for a female lead.
The mechanics of that specific storyline regarding biological infertility, trying to conceive within that era's medical constraints, and the societal pressure of providing an heir, all of that essentially gets erased.
It has to be entirely rewritten.
Yes. The studio might think they're just changing a casting demographic to reflect modern diversity, but they are actually taking a sledgehammer to the load-bearing emotional pillars of the original text. You lose the specific resonance that made fans love that book in the first.
Okay, so if we apply that narrative breakdown to Snape in Harry Potter, changing his race isn't just a visual update.
Not at all.
It fundamentally rewrites the sociology of the Wizarding world.
Yes, it does.
Because Snape's entire origin story, his descent into the Death Eaters, it's all rooted in being fiercely, relentlessly bullied by James Potter and Sirius Black.
And James is a wealthy, popular, arrogant, white character.
Right.
Let's look at the exact mechanics of that bullying. There is a very famous, pivotal flashback scene.
Oh, the one by the lake.
Yes. James Potter and his friends use magic to physically levitate Snape upside down in the air.
Right.
They expose him, humiliate him in front of a crowd of cheering students.
Yeah.
If you cast a black actor as Snape, you now have a scene where a wealthy white character hoists a black man into a tree to humiliate and physically dominate him while a crowd watches.
Wow, that is horrifying.
It changes everything.
It really does. That takes on massive, incredibly uncomfortable racial undertones that absolutely do not exist in the original text.
Exactly.
It changes the entire context of the scene from, schoolyard arrogance into a display of racialized violence.
It morphs the genre of the scene completely, and it compounds when you look at the dialogue.
What do you mean?
In the text, when James Potter is asked why he hates Snape so much, James replies, "It's more the fact that he exists." If you know what I mean?
Oh, wow. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
If a white character looks at a black character and says, it's the fact that he exists, if you know what I mean.
Sounds totally different.
That is explicit racial prejudice. It completely destroys the moral ambiguity of James Potter.
Right.
Because the whole point of James is that he was an arrogant jock who eventually matured, which makes Harry's idolization of him complicated.
Exactly.
If James is effectively written as a racist who enacts racially coded violence against a black student, he's irredeemable.
Harry's internal conflict about his father's legacy just falls apart.
It really does.
Then look at the character of Neville Longbottom.
Okay.
In the story, there is a magical creature called a bug.
Right, the thing in the wardrobe.
Yes. It takes the physical form of whatever the viewer fears most in the world.
Okay.
Neville, a young white child, steps up to the boggart, and it turns into his greatest fear, Professor Snape.
Wow. Put that on a screen in 2026 or 2027.
Visually, it's alarming.
It is. You have a scenario where a young white child's absolute deepest, darkest fear manifests as a black man.
The optics of that are a nightmare for a modern.
A total nightmare. And we haven't even touched the romantic subtext.
Right. The core motivation for Snape.
Snape's ultimate tragedy, the reason he turns double agent in the first place, is his lifelong unrequited love for Lily Potter.
Yeah.
So Lily, a white woman, essentially friend-zones Snape, who is now played by a black man.
Right.
And she actively chooses to marry the wealthy white man who ruthlessly bullied him.
You can see the cascading failures of the narrative logic here.
It's just falling apart at every turn.
In the pursuit of representation, in the pursuit of making a casting choice that signals modern progressive value, the creators accidentally write a storyline that plays out like a highly problematic, racially charged tragedy.
It's so ironic. So what does this all mean?
Well, this highlights a massive disconnect in how studios handle the fallout of these narrative
Because when audiences read the source material and then they look at the screen and they point out these glaring logical clashes, the studios almost never engage with the actual narrative criticism.
Never. They don't say, you know what, the Bogart scene is going to be tricky to navigate.
No, instead, the playbook is to deflect and diagnose the audience.
Yes, diagnose. That's the perfect word.
Audiences who point out that Neville's Boggart is visually problematic or that Adam Driver perfectly matches the book's explicit physical description of a pale, sallow-skinned, hook-nosed man.
And he really is the perfect fan cast.
He is, but fans who point that out are frequently gassed. They are labeled as bigoted or resistant to diversity by the studios and the entertainment press.
The pressure is placed entirely on the consumer to basically react the right way to these agenda-driven revisions.
Right. The studio takes zero accountability for failing to prioritize a faithful, logical adaptation.
It becomes a purity test for the viewer.
Exactly. If you notice the plot holes caused by the casting, you fail the moral test.
Right.
And this intense battle over modifying the core of the Harry Potter story, it naturally bleeds right into the intense real-world tension surrounding its creator, J.K. Rowling.
It's unavoidable.
And by extension, the actors who built their entire careers on her imagination.
Yes.
Now, before we get into this next part, I want to make something very clear to you, listeners. We are about to delve into some highly polarizing political and social activism.
Very polarizing.
On one side of the cultural divide, Rowling is viewed as a protector of fundamental rights. On the other, she is viewed as a dangerous antagonist.
And we are neutrally examining the exact viewpoints and actions as they exist in the cultural sphere right now.
Exactly. We're not taking sides.
Yeah.
We just want to understand how this impacts the entertainment industry.
Right. So looking at the fracture between the art and the art, it has never been more vividly illustrated than in the recent comments from actor Andrew Garfield.
Oh, yes.
Garfield recently spoke out about J.K. Rowling, and he actually referred to her using the phrase, "she who shall remain."
Which is an incredible psychological tell.
It really is.
He is literally invoking Voldemort, the primary villain trope from Rowling's own book, to describe an author who invented the trope.
He is using her own magical architecture to banish.
It's wild. So Garfield goes on to praise the films themselves.
Right.
He praises Daniel Radcliffe's acting. He praises the artisans, the craftspeople, the makeup artists who built the Creature Workshop.
He says they made beautiful art.
But he explicitly states that he doesn't want to put money in the pocket of inhumane legislation.
And To understand the weight of Garfield's statement, we really have to look at the exact mechanics of Rowling's act.
Right, because it's not just casual tweeting.
No, not at all. She is heavily financing and publicly championing specific legal and political battles centered on biological sex.
Let's look at the overarching philosophy of her activism based on this.
Okay.
She operates from the stance that biological sex is real, immutable, and that biological women require distinct legal protections and exclusive spaces.
Right.
And she puts her vast wealth behind. For instance, she actively fought the Scottish Prison Service over their policies regarding the placement of trans women in biological women's prison facilities.
And the argument from her camp is that allowing individuals who are assigned male at birth, female-only enclosures, presents an inherent physical danger to female.
Right, and this isn't just a theoretical debate for them.
No, it's not. The pushback against self-identification policy in prison gained massive traction after real...
Like the case in New Jersey.
Exactly. In New Jersey, 2 female inmates became pregnant after being housed with a trans-identified inmate.
Wow. And Rowling utilizes her platform and resources to actively fight against these specific policies.
Yeah. She also publicly celebrated the UK Supreme Court decision that legally defined a woman as a biological female.
Right. And perhaps the most explosive confrontation was regarding the 2024 Scottish hate crime.
That was a huge moment.
Scotland passed a law where people could report hate crimes, including misgendering or specific speech regarding gender identity. In response, thousands of people, including activists and everyday citizens, mass reported J.K. Rowling to the police for her public views on biological sex.
And her response to being mass reported to the authorities was just absolute public defiance.
She didn't back down at all.
No, she didn't issue a PR apology. She didn't retreat. She dared the authorities, saying, "Arrest, lock me up." She essentially forced the Scottish to either arrest one of the most famous women in the world for stating her beliefs on biology or admit that the law couldn't be enforced against.
It was a massive display of utilizing her untouchable wealth and status to defy a legislative act she viewed as draconian. So bringing us back to Andrew Garfield, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
He says we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. He wants to appreciate the art, the makeup, the actors, but reject the creator because her financial success directly funds this highly polarizing activism. But I have to ask, can you actually separate the baby from the bathwater like Garfield suggests when the creator's financial success from the art directly funds their activism?
This raises an important question. The fundamental logic of Garfield's stance kind of collapses under its own weight when you really analyze.
How so?
Well, framing J.K. Rowling as the bathwater that needs guarded.
Why?
Because her specific intellectual property is the baby. She isn't the bathwater. She's the architect.
Oh, that's true.
Her imagination launched the entire phenomenon. It created the jobs for those exact makeup artists Garfield is praising.
Right.
It launched Daniel Radcliffe's career. It sparked the theme parks, the generations of fandoms, and the very movies that Garfield is celebrating.
It's like standing in a beautiful, sprawling mansion, praising the paint color and the intricate woodwork, but saying you completely despise the architect who poured the foundation and engineered the walls.
Exactly. The house wouldn't exist without them.
And every time you buy a ticket to tour the house, you pay the architect.
It is an inescapable financial and creative.
It really is.
Garfield's attempt to conceptually sever Rowling from Hogwarts is basically a psychological defense mechanism.
So he can enjoy the magic without feeling complicit in her politics.
Yes, and his willingness to speak out so publicly about this brings us to a much larger, frankly exhausting debate.
Oh, the big one. Should actors use their platforms for political activism at all?
Right. We are seeing a massive divergence in Hollywood philosophy regarding the role of the entertainer.
Let's contrast Garfield's moral posturing with actor Josh Duhamel.
Okay.
Duhamel offers a completely pragmatic, almost refreshing viewpoint on what it means to be famous. He views his role in society not as a moral leader, but as the court jester.
The court jester. I love that.
He explicitly says his job is just to make cool stuff and entertain.
He fully embraces the fundamental reality of his profession.
Exactly. He plays pretend for a living. He memorizes lines written by other people and stands on a tape mark.
Right.
And he shares this brilliant anecdote about playing golf with a friend down in Georgia.
Oh, the T-shirt story.
Yes. His friend meets him at the airport wearing a T-shirt that simply reads in giant letters, "Nobody cares what actors think."
And Duhamel's reaction to that shirt is vital.
He wasn't offended at all.
No, he didn't launch into a speech about his platform or his responsibility. He thought it was...
And more importantly, he recognized the core truth in it.
He views staying out of politics not just as a matter of humility, but as a ruthless business.
Right. If your goal is to get as many people as possible to watch your movie, why would you intentionally alienate half of your potential audience by preaching to them about highly divisive political issues?
It's basic math.
Exactly. If you stand on a soapbox and insult 50% of the population, you just cut your box office in half. It makes zero business sense.
None.
Yeah.
But Duhamel's mindset is increasingly rare.
It really is.
It severely clashes with the modern Hollywood ecosystem, which operates on what we can call the right think.
The right think mandate.
Yeah. There is a pervasive, almost suffocating expectation now that actors must project their political beliefs loudly and constantly.
You definitely see this with actors like Rachel Zegler.
Oh, for sure.
She frequently uses her platform to weigh in on social issues.
Or
Javier Bardem, who wore political pins on the red carpet to make a geopolitical statement.
right. There is an energy projected by many modern stars that their opinions carry extra societal weight simply because they have millions of Instagram followers.
They don't view themselves as court jesters. They view themselves as moral arbiters.
Exactly. And if you refuse to play the role of the moral arbiter, there are tangible consequences.
Right. Look at Zachary Levi.
What happened with him?
He has spoken out recently, claiming that missing out on opportunities or roles in Hollywood is a direct punishment for not towing the line of acceptable mainstream industry beliefs.
So if you step out of line, the ecosystem rejects.
Which leads to perhaps the most fascinating and terrifying cultural shift we are seeing.
What's that?
The psychological mechanics of how neutrality is defined.
Ah, yes. The neutrality is mega phenomenon.
Exactly. We are living in an era where refusing to speak out, refusing to wear the pin, refusing to post the black square or the flag in your bio.
It is now instantly categorized by the public and the media as a right-leaning conservative stance.
It's crazy. Silence used to mean you were just staying out of it.
Now, silence is interpreted as violence. Silence is interpreted as complicity with the enemy.
Let's look at the psychology of why this happens.
Okay.
In the digital age, fandoms and political affiliations operate like hypervigilant immune systems.
That's a great comparison.
They are constantly scanning for threats. If you don't actively broadcast the correct ideological password, the immune system attacks you as a foreign body.
Right. Look at Sydney Sweeney.
Oh, that was such a bizarre situation.
It really was. She posted a totally normal, candid family photo online showing support for her brother who was deployed in the military.
Yeah, just a normal family party.
But some family members in the background were wearing generic red-colored...
And simply being normal, supporting a military family member without a sprawling, pre-approved political manifesto attached to the caption.
It was immediately processed by the internet's immune system as a secret Trump endorsement.
It's wild. They zoomed in on the hats, they analyzed the demographics of her family, and they declare her guilty of wrong thing.
Just for a family photo.
And then you have Keira Knightley.
What happened there?
She was asked a highly charged question in an interview, specifically about trans issues and J.K. Rowling.
Okay.
And she simply laughed and deflected the question.
She probably just didn't want to engage in a toxic debate while promoting a film.
Exactly. But immediately, that laughter, that refusal to plant a flag in the ground, led to think pieces and accusations that she must be deeply conservative or a secret Rowling supporter.
It's a purity testing mechanism. It forces compliance.
It is truly amazing how quickly the corporate culture shifts. I mean, think about it. 20 years ago, it was considered deeply unprofessional to talk politics at work or isolate your consumer base.
Totally taboo.
Now, the culture demands constant, unyielding political disclosure from entertainers at all time.
If you don't tell the public exactly who you voted for, they will assume the worst possible interpretation of your side.
And attempt to dismantle your career.
It is a massive paradox.
It really is. On one hand, society absolutely pedestalizes actors.
We throw them endless, lavish award shows.
We dissect their red carpet looks. We hang on their every word in glossy magazine profile.
But on the other hand, everyday people outside of the Hollywood bubble, the people actually buying the tickets and paying for the streaming subscriptions, are experiencing profound fatigue.
They're exhausted. They're tired of being constantly lectured to by people who live in gated mansions and fly private.
It's exactly what Josh Duhamel's friend Shirt said.
Nobody cares what actors think.
And yet, the actors won't stop telling us.
So navigating this modern media landscape really requires an incredibly high degree of critical thinking.
It does. It requires the audience to step back, look past the marketing campaigns, ignore the Twitter trending topic, and understand the structural cultural conversations happening behind us.
Right. When you see a baffling casting choice or a beloved property being awkwardly modern,
Or an actor giving a highly polished political speech on a red carpet.
you are seeing the churn of an industry that is simultaneously terrified of financial risk and desperate for moral validation.
It's about seeing the chisel marks on the time capsule.
Exactly. We've covered incredible ground today.
We really have.
We looked at the sheer economic and creative exhaustion of the remake trend. The endless indexing of old IP, while original ideas are just starved of oxygen.
Right. And we examine the narrative architecture of casting choices.
How swapping a character's race or gender doesn't just change a visual, it can accidentally rewrite the emotional core.
And introduce highly problematic dynamics into stories they didn't originally have them.
We also navigated the inescapable loop between the art and the artist.
And we unpacked the hyper-politicized reality of modern Hollywood.
Where an actor is either a court jester making cool stuff or a soapbox preacher demanding your compliance.
And, if you are listening to this, that fatigue you feel as a viewer, that exhaustion with the endless recycling of old stories and the constant political posturing, that is the most important metric of all. Because when the audience gets tired enough, the paradigm shifts entirely.
Which leaves me with one final, slightly provocative thought for you to mull over today.
I love a provocative thought. Let's hear it.
If audiences are truly this exhausted, tired of the purity tests, tired of being lectured, tired of the uninspired narrative gymnastics of modern remake, how long until technology allows us to completely bypass the Hollywood ecosystem altogether?
Oh, wow.
Imagine a near future where you simply prompt an AI to generate a brand new, visually flawless, completely original adventure in your favorite fictional universe.
That is wild to think about.
No actors to go on political soapboxes, no studios gaslighting you about lore-breaking casting, no remake fatigue.
Just the story.
Just the pure, unadulterated story tailored perfectly to the universe you love. Would you watch it?
That's a great question to leave on.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.